Have you ever wanted to be fucked so hard that you regret being born? If so, welcome to Elden Ring, the game that will beat you down time and time again, and then just to flex on your already bruised ego, will rob you of all your hard-earned runes whenever you die. In this video, myself, the average player, will be trying to beat Elden Ring in under 12 hours. If you want to enjoy the video, consider liking and subscribing, it helps the channel out a lot. With that being said, let's get right into the video. I begin my Elden Ring adventure in a random room located somewhere. I don't spend too much time here grabbing an item on the ground and heading out. I continue on to cross a wooden bridge. This next area is where you would usually encounter your first boss style fight, but to save myself some time, I jump right off the map. I then wake up to find myself in the Stranded Graveyard. Here is where I would acquire my flasks. Now for anyone that hasn't played Elden Ring before, you have a flask of Crimson that restores your HP and a flask of Cerulean that restores your FP. Once out of the Stranded Graveyard, I find myself in Limegrave. I hit a Site of Grace. Sites of Grace act as waypoints that you can travel to at any time, allowing for quicker travel around the map. I then go and talk to this man who tells me I'm maidenless. He'll be used for a quest I will complete later on. I would then head over to the Church of El. I head over to this merchant to buy a crafting kit off him, so I can use it to make items later on. I would then head over to the Site of Grace in front of the Giant Gate, where I would talk to Melina, where she would give me my Spectral Steed Whistle, so I could summon Torrents, our mount. Now that I have Torrents, movement would be way easier. I would now head over and kill this guy and steal the flail out of this chest. It would be used to help me grind out some rooms later on for leveling up and weapon upgrades. I continue to move on, grabbing my Somber Stone 1. In Elden Ring, there are two different types of stones for upgrading. The first is Smithing Stones, the second is Somber Smithing Stones. Depending on the weapon you use, depends on which ones you need. I would eventually make my way over to the Mistwood Ruins, where I would acquire the Axe Talisman, allowing me to do more damage with my charged attacks. This talisman would be used to defeat the final boss. Now that I've grabbed the Axe Talisman, I headed over to the Third Church of Marika. This is one of the 12 churches located around the map that would have a sacred tier located at it. It also just happens to have our Mixed Wondrous Physic flask. This flask would allow us to increase certain stats, and it would be essential to make this run more possible for me. I now return back to the Church of El and get my Spirit Summon Bell, and talk to the merchant to get the Snap emote. With the Snap emote, I can return to the Mistwood Ruins and get Blade to come down to talk to me. I could now go and get the weapon I'll be using for most of the challenge. But before doing that, I will use the teleport behind the Third Church to get to Grail's Dragon Barrow. Here is where one of the best early rune farming locations is. I could grab part of my Dectus Medallion, and I would also grab Radagon's Sword Seal so I can wield the flail with the correct stats. I then did the easiest early game grinding method until I had 300,000 runes. I then used almost all of my runes on leveling up. I would now finally go and get the weapon I'll be using. I headed over to one of the teleporters to let me enter the Evergale. I would summon in Blade and kill the Bloodhound Knight. This would give me the Bloodhound Blade. I then used the Outer Trail to skip Margaret and go unlock the Rose Church for later. I'd kill a Dung Beetle for Bloodflame Blade, and I would then quickly grab the Glintstone Key so I wouldn't need to grab it later on. I'd quickly head over to Master Eg to buy the Somber Stones there and the Carrion Filgreed Crest. Because I was trying to get my sword as high of a level before fighting any bosses, I decided to go and get the final part of my Dectus Medallion and grab my Somber Smithing Stone 5. I finally increased level of my Bloodhound Fang and went over and fought the Clean Rot Knights for the Golden Scarab. I did this because I didn't want to use the rune farming spot in Moog's area as much as possible. I wanted to quickly bully the Tree Sentinel, and then I went back to Khalid to grab a Smithing Stone 8 and 9. I now finally decided that it was time for me to get ready to face Margaret. I killed the Knight's Cavalry on the bridge back in Limegrave, and then defeated Patches so I could buy the cookbook he sells and Margaret's Shackle. This cookbook allows me to make the Gold Pickled Fowl Foot. That would increase my rune earnings the same way my Golden Scarab does. I finally decided to go and face the first proper boss, Margaret the Fell Omen. Because of all of my prep work, Margaret stood no chance. With Blood Flame on my Bloodhound Fang, I was hitting for massive numbers, and by using the unique skill of this blade, I easily took down Margaret without breaking a sweat. I decided to carry this momentum all the way onto the next boss, Godric the Grafted. Godric is a two-phase boss, with his first phase being super easy to handle with my sword. The same strategy applied here that I used on Margaret. Put Bloodflame on my blade and tear into him until he chopped off his arm. At this point, if you're not careful, the fire damage he can do to you from his dragon arm can end you quickly. So I made sure to get up close and personal with him to make the likelihood of him hitting me slim to none. and even with his brand new dragon arm, in the end, Godric was slain. Now that Godric was defeated, I headed over to the school in Lernia of the Lake and entered through the main gate with the glintstone key we got earlier. I quickly hit the site of grace and went over and grabbed a golden seed. I then defeated the invader and decided it was now time to take the lift up into the school. The first boss you encounter in the school is the Red Wolf of Radagon. The Red Wolf of Radagon can be a difficult fight, only because it doesn't stop moving. Continuously jumping around and launching spells at you, it can be difficult to find chances to inflict damage, especially with a large heavy sword. Thankfully, this wasn't one of those difficult times. I destroyed him so quickly that Red Wolf gave me less trouble than some of the regular enemies. After defeating the Red Wolf, I kept pushing my way through the school until I encountered the one NPC that has made me hate life more than any other one, and that is the Monogram Carrion Knight.
What did he say?
Not only does this stupid NPC do tons of damage, he can parry your attacks and repose you. But that didn't matter this time. I killed him off swiftly and hopped on the lift. I realized I probably wasn't ready to take on the Queen, so I went to the Grand Lift to try and get a Somber Smithing Stone 7 from Altos Plateau. I hit my first site of grace and continued to move my way through Altos, until I remembered if I wanted to get Somber Stone 7, I need to make it into the capital, which meant taking on DTS. And to be honest, I didn't feel ready for that, so I decided it might be better to focus on leveling up and gaining more power. So I killed off the Stone Digger Troll, destroyed the Crystallian, and cut down the Falling Star Beast. I then went over to the Rose Church and talked to the man that called me maidenless at the beginning of the game. He gives you a bloody finger, so I went to the invasion area and killed Magnus the Beastclaw. For anyone that doesn't know what an invasion area is, it is a lot like a bloodstain on the ground, but when you interact with it, you invade an NPC's world. Once they are defeated, they can progress quest lines and give decent loot. I then returned to the Rose Church and spoke to him again. This time, he gave me a piece of cloth and said it needed maiden's blood. I went to the Church of Inhibition and interacted with the dead woman in the seat. I now returned back to the Rose Church for the final time and I received the Pure Blood's Knight medal. This would allow me to go and challenge Moog and unlock the best rooming farm location in the game. I decided I was ready to challenge Renala now, so I went back to the school and entered the boss room. Renala is a two-phase fight. In the first phase, you kill off 3 students and that drops her from the sky where you then damage her. Phase 2, you get transported away and now fight Renala. The biggest difficulty with this fight is her summon spawns. They get in the way, they do a fair amount of damage, and if you're unlucky, she just likes to spam them. This is usually an issue. Thankfully, I was able to defeat her before she could summon in any spirits at all. With Renala defeated, I still didn't feel fully ready to verse DTS, so I decided to go and take on Radon. The only reason the Radon fight sucks is because of how much damage he does. But even though he does lots of damage, he also leaves massive openings, allowing for you to do your own fair share of damage to him. Thankfully, Radon didn't take me too many tries. In the end, he was defeated. This allowed me to kill an NPC nearby called Alexander. He does have a quest, but to be honest, I was more interested in the shard he dropped that increased my damage. Now that I have Alexander's shard, I decided to go to Nokron City and challenge my Mimic copy. This is truly an easy fight, so there wasn't much to say about it. I destroyed the fake version of me and decided to go to Rani's quest, so I could get access to an easy Somber 7. I pushed my way through Carrier Manor until I reached Royal Knight Loretta. Due to the fact this boss can be accessed really early into the game, she stood no chance. By using the skill of Bloodhound's Fang, I wiped her health. I didn't play defensively at all. The quicker I could get through these bosses, the better. I wanted to save as much time for the final few bosses, knowing I would struggle there the most. Rani's quest is really simple. I talked to her and then returned back to Nokron City and grabbed the Fingerslayer blade from the chest. I then went back and talked to Rani again and she gave me an hourglass. I took it to the Carrion study hall and placed it on the bench. This flipped the entire area upside down. I worked my way through the building, eventually making it to the top and grabbing the curse mark of death. That was all I had to do. I then used a portal in one of the towers near Rani to teleport to the other part of Nokron City. At this point, I had only currently been playing for around 4 hours. Once in the new area of Nokron City, I killed a creature dangling from the roof, which finally gave me a Somber 7. I decided now to go to the audience ground. I ran all the way up to the chest just below the Mog fight and opened it, giving me a Somber Ancient Dragonstone. This meant I was now able to upgrade my Bloodhound's Fang to plus 10, the highest level it can be. With all my prep almost being done, I decided to go and buy Radon's armor for some more defense. I decided that I was now ready to take on Altus Plateau, and I was ready for DTS. I approached and took him on. His moveset is really easy to read, and yes, I know there is a cheese where you knock him off the cliff, but to be honest, I feel that way can be a bit cheap, so I decided I'd stick the fight out and defeat him the way he was designed to be. With the defender of the royal capital dead, I moved through the corridors until finally making it into the inner wall. I worked my way down to the Erdtree avatar, and defeated it. I then climbed up the dragon's wings and eventually got over to the next boss fight, Godfrey. Because we verse Godfrey later on as well, I'm going to refer to this boss as Goldfrey. The Goldfrey fight can be a really easy fight, but that wasn't the case for me. Due to my skill attack being very slow and him attacking super quick, there was a few times where I was left with the only option but to run to the other side of arena and heal up, or put Blood Flame back on my blade. But even though this happened a lot, I didn't let it get to me. I eventually managed to defeat Goldfrey after deciding not just to rely on my Bloodhound's skill. Beating Goldfrey would give me the ability to put another talisman on. After Goldfrey is Morgott. Thankfully, this fight would be a good break from the difficult fights, because you can use Margit's shackle on Morgott. I ended up destroying most of his health whilst he was pinned to the ground from the shackle. This allowed for an easy defeat. After defeating Morgott, I challenged the Fell Twins on my way to the mountaintops of the Giants. Nothing really interesting happened in this fight. They were both really weak and were easily taken down with 2 hits of my Bloodhound Fang's skill. After defeating the Fell Twins, I went and repaired Morgott's Great Rune. This would raise my max HP by 25% whenever I used an Arc Rune. I then continued on and eventually made it to the mountaintops of the Giants. Mountaintops of the Giants is a really quick area of the game if you know where to go. On my way to the Fire Giant, I killed the Black Blade Kindred, the Erdtree Avatar, and also Bloody Finger Okener. The Bloody Finger Okener drops a very unique weapon, known as the Rivers of Blood. This weapon is amazing when you use the correct setup. I personally didn't use it in this run, but it is definitely a good weapon to use. The Fire Giant battle is probably the most tedious fight in the entire game. I only say this because after you destroy his anklet, he then proceeds to become a transformer and roll out, and doesn't stop, making it terribly annoying for a sword to do any decent damage to him before he whips out his evasive maneuvers. And phase 2 is even worse. Not only does the Fire Giant's damage resistance increase, but he rolls now even more. That's not to say this fight is all complaints. Some of the attacks are fun to dodge, and the idea of such an open arena boss fight in the snow is amazing. Not only is this fight visually stunning, you can tell that FromSoft really cared about the setting of these boss fights. After defeating the Fire Giant, I climbed the Giant Cauldron and spoke to Melina at the site of Grace. I touched her hand and she burnt the Erdtree to the ground. With the burning of the Erdtree, I woke up in the crumbling Furun Azula. There's 2 main fights here, the Godskin duo, or as people know them as Fat and Skinny, and the man that haunts my dreams and makes me wish that I was never even conceived, and that is Malekith. But let's not focus on him right now. First, we need to get past the Godskin duo. The Godskin duo is one of the duo fights that is genuinely just difficult and a lot of players struggle with. Not only do the bosses like to walk around holding each other's dicks in their hands, but they love to throw black fire. But that isn't to say it can't be a fun fight. Due to some of the little glitches in this fight, it can become a very funny and fun fight. From the fat one not being able to roll up the pillars, to one of the strategies being where you put them to sleep and defeat them whilst they're asleep. These little tricks make this fight quite fun if you can eventually get good at it. Thankfully, this fight didn't take too long for me to finish, which meant I was finally up to Malekith. Just kidding, there was still one boss that I hadn't challenged yet. That boss you either love or you hate. The boss that is a real skill check. The boss I'm talking about is Mohg. Not only does Mohg do insane amounts of damage, he also has Blood Flame and can cause bleed. This makes it so even if you are a great player, if he lands enough hits on you, you will end up bleeding and more than likely dying. Once you get used to his combos, it becomes way easier to dodge his attacks. I was under a lot of pressure here though. My time was counting down, so I didn't have hours to spend attempting Mohg, so I needed to beat him quickly. Thankfully, after a few attempts, I managed to finally defeat him. It was now finally time for me to face Malekith. This boss is in no way, shape or form easy. With his massive blood flame damage, which does damage over time, and his quick attacks with small openings to attack back, Malekith was not a boss designed to be defeated with a heavy sword. But that is phase 2. Phase 1 isn't that bad. A lot of his attacks follow the same attack combos, so once you've done this combo once, you've done them a million times. This meant that in my case, my issue wasn't phase 1, it was mostly phase 2. The hard truth was this boss took me a while. If I wasn't dying to the blood flame, I got slaughtered by him when he decided to turn into a Beyblade. However, with enough patience and the realization that I should only use light attacks, I managed to defeat Malekith. With the defeat of Malekith, I was up to my final 3 bosses. I was teleported back to the capital, where after a bit of travel, I'd come face to face with Gideon. Now usually Gideon is an easy fight, but for some reason, I struggled so much with him. And at the worst time too. With each minute passing by, I was starting to become more stressed, thinking about how I might fail, but I kept pushing through, playing it smart, and in the end, killing Gideon. That leaves only 2 bosses left. Thankfully, the Godfrey fight plays a lot like the Goldfrey fight, just with one difference, and the one difference is that it is now a 2-phase fight. Because I had practiced phase 1 before with Goldfrey, my main issue was phase 2. Not only are 2 out of every 3 attacks grabs, every time he does grab you, he does about half your health. This left not a lot of room for error, because if I made too many errors, I wouldn't have enough heals, or I would get killed from an attack I thought I could survive. This was just another battle that with each attempt I got better and better, until finally I managed to defeat Godfrey. I was finally at my final battle. Here is where I would finally switch my build to the metal balls, and a strength build. This is one of the best builds I've used to beat Radagon. So thank you to Mustafa for showing me this build, and also thank you to Ahmed for helping me through my first playthrough of Elden Ring. Now not only does this build allow for a good stagger on Radagon, it also does insane damage on the Elden Beast. With my build ready and some time left on the clock, it was time to finish this. With Radagon and the Elden Beast defeated, I managed to beat Elden Ring in 10 hours, 36 minutes and 34 seconds, easily finishing the game in under 12 hours. Considering my previous attempt at this, I beat the game in over 15 hours, I was quite happy with this run. Now, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And with that being said, bye for now.